Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Community Environment and Noise Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Jim Fott. I'm from Lura Consulting, so I'm your neutral third-party moderator tonight. You can see the agenda here. We're going to switch the agenda slightly. There are going to be some opening remarks and some welcoming remarks. The discussion items will fall after the 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, which are the update on the 2017-2037 Toronto Pearson Draft Master Plan, the release of the 2018 to 2022 5-year Noise Management Action Plan, and an update on the independent Toronto Airspace Noise Review. And then public comments will start at approximately 7:30, and we'll have questions and comments at that time. So if you wouldn't mind, please hold your questions and comments until we get to that period. There'll be time for you to provide comments and questions then. So with that, I'll introduce Hilary Marshall, who is the Vice President of Stakeholder Relations and Communications at the GTAA.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. See a lot of familiar faces in the room. In a moment, George Holikov, our Associate Director of Airport Planning, is going to walk you through our draft master plan. But I wanted to preface George's presentation with a bit of background. Our draft master plan has been developed on an operating plan consistent with how we operate today. And that's to say that's an east-west configuration. The plan outlines our short, medium, and long-term plans for how we're going to respond to forecasted growth in regional and worldwide demand for air traffic. It looks out 20 years to 2037, and we update it every 10 years for those of you who aren't familiar with it. Of course, even the best forecast is just that. It's a forecast and not a certainty. So the draft master plan serves as a blueprint, and updating it every 10 years helps to ensure it's informed by the latest data. We use the master plan to determine the future development of the airport's physical facilities and to establish our land use plan. The draft document has now been submitted to the Minister of Transport as of December 1st, and the Minister approves the land use portion of the master plan. You may have already seen it on our website. It was posted as of Friday. The document was created around the theme of growing responsibly, and of course, an important part of growing responsibly involves mitigating aircraft noise. And we're going to talk about aircraft noise through our Noise Management Action Plan shortly. But with both the Draft Master Plan and the Noise Management Action Plan, I want to underscore that your feedback and suggestions across a variety of forums have been vital to informing our next steps. We've been listening to you and the concerns that you have. Over the summer, we held events across the GTA to hear your concerns and your thoughts on growth and your concerns, and to understand how we could better manage noise. I thank you for your willingness to collaborate and for making your voices heard as we work together so that Toronto Pearson and the communities it serves can grow sustainably and in step. With that, I'm going to pass it over to George to take us through the high-level master plan. Thanks, George.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Hilary. Welcome, and thanks for setting some time aside to hear us and to see what the draft master plan is bringing. So we've been working on this master plan for a number of years, and it's basically a document that is... okay, thanks. Yeah. So, as you probably know, our ground lease and also good business practice requires planning. So we are planning our next year, next 5, 10, and 20 years. And our master plan is actually our roadmap for the next 20 years. How we're going to meet the anticipated demand and how we're going to grow responsibly. So we are mandated by our ground lease with Transport Canada to manage a first-class major international airport that meets the demand for capacity. And we have just submitted, as Hilary said, our draft master plan to Transport Minister, and we are now into the 90-day review period. So we look at the global, regional, and local traffic demand, and we basically establish a plan, you know, how to meet that demand over the next 20 years. So as part of that process, we obviously reach out to a number of stakeholders, and among them, you know, our communities, our government agencies, provincial, local, regional governments, airline partners, and other business partners, passengers, and aviation industry in general, aviation service providers as well. So in doing so, we've basically arranged for around 45 events throughout the region, and we basically received, and engaged around 7,000 residents in the process. We have had 5 workshops during this summer, and I'm sure lots of you have attended at least some of them, and had over 500 community members attend them, and had over 2,500 community members reaching to us through completing the online survey. And also we have established, as you probably know, the residents reference panel with 36 residents selected from across the region to provide their view on how we should be growing responsibly. Obviously, every master plan, so ours is no exception. Yeah, I can be very loud actually, but I don't want to scare you. Okay.
Better?
Yeah. Is this much better? Yeah. Thank you. So, as you all know, every airport master plan is basically comprised on 4 major components. So, if you look at from the growth going clockwise, you first have to establish what is the growth you're anticipating, and then basically look at how you respond to that growth in terms of your infrastructure plan for the short, medium, and long term, and then look at how you basically strike the right balance between accommodating growth, enabling great economic benefits and social benefits of that growth, and also, mitigate and minimize the negative impacts that airport operations inevitably bring along with the positive impacts. And finally, we basically have a land use plan, which basically outlines how we allocate and make best use of the land that we have available. So, speaking about economic impact, Toronto Pearson Airport is one of the key provincial drivers of, regional economy and prosperity. So Ontario being almost 40% of our national economy, that stresses the importance of the airport as part of the province where we live. We expect that Ontario GDP will grow in the next 25 years or so to $1 trillion, and the population growth will be over 15 million people in 25 years' time. And those are really the 2 key drivers of the aviation growth and the demand. So looking at, the most recent past, 2016, and reflecting on what we anticipate, I'm sorry.
Did you go back one?
Go back one.
Oh,
Yeah,
here you go.
you want to go?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So, looking at our current performance and looking at the growth, this is really, and looking out 20 years out, we have basically established a most probable, most probable forecast in 20 years' time. So last year we had around 44 million passengers come in and out and through our airport on just over 450,000 movements, and we processed around 450,000 tons of cargo. Well, I'll just keep sliding back. So, please. So we anticipate, and as you can imagine, every forecast is right and wrong. So, but we looked at the previous forecast and we compared ours, and we look at, trying to do it in many different ways, but basically we established a stochastic approach to forecasting this time around to factor in as many factors that drive the growth. And we basically came up with the most likely forecast of 85 million annual passengers going through.
green.
Sorry, it's preset to automatically go on its own.
Yeah.
We're just gonna pull that off. Poor George.
Yeah.
We'll pull that
Sorry,
off for you, George.
I'll.
You keep talking and
Yeah.
we'll.
Okay. So yeah, I know numbers by heart pretty much. So basically, we anticipate to have these 85 million passengers on just over 630,000 movements altogether. And we see a continuing trend that has been identified over the last decade or so across North America and worldwide, which is the continuous upgauging in aircraft size. And that upgauging, it's important to understand, doesn't happen only on high-end or larger aircraft. It's basically across the whole range of aircraft sizes, right? And we anticipate that our average passenger load per passenger movement will go from 108 to 106 to 140. We look at other global airports and we find, and did some benchmarking and find that, 100 passengers per aircraft movement is, definitely within reason. And we also expect that cargo will about double in tonnage, and that will be primarily due to the increase of larger aircraft and the so-called belly hold, where you can actually carry lots of cargo along with the passengers. And the good news is actually that compared to the previous master plan in 2008, where we thought that the aircraft fleet mix will remain pretty much constant moving into the future, we actually need much less movements compared to 10 years before to actually cater to a lot more passenger volume, which is good news. And therefore, we think that we can actually deliver these or meet the growth demand with the existing 5 runway system that we have today. And not only that, as Hilary mentioned, we also anticipate that we can actually execute without changing the way we operate today, right? So moving on, and speaking, this is the actual slide. Next slide is that basically we looked at our economic impact and we found that, we are currently serving, domestic, international, US markets and overseas markets reaching around about close to 70% of the global economy measured in the GDP. And we expect that to go over 80% as we make additional markets available to our region and to basically, enable people to visit friends and family, to basically go for leisure, to have people come and visit us, and to have businesses grow and flourish. We currently represent 6.3% of the Ontario GDP. Expect that to grow to 8.5% in 20 years' time. And our economic impact study shows that our direct, indirect, and induced jobs account for over 300,000 jobs in the province of Ontario right now, and expected to grow to 700,000 jobs in 20 years' time. So those are the great economic benefits. We also look at, at historic trends and projected trends in terms of linking how the GTA, Greater Toronto Area population growth, correlates with our aircraft movement growth, right? And we find that there is actually quite a good correlation there. And as I said before, the population growth drives the transportation demand and aviation growth in particular. So speaking about land use plan, in terms of what we had in the last master plan, the only addition with this master plan is the in the northwest corner of our land area is area indicated with number 1. That's so-called Boeing lands. So we just basically brought in another 30 hectares of Boeing lands under our premises, and that makes our total land footprint just short of 1,900 hectares, or 19 square kilometers for those who like square kilometers better. So with that, we basically, the other major change is that we are planning for a major regional transit center that we also think it's not going to improve the road access to and from the airport, but also serve as a regional transportation hub in its own right, connecting the region much better, reducing the number of cars on the roads and congestion that goes with it, and the greenhouse gas emissions that basically also impact our lives negatively. In terms of what's indicated on the slide with number 3, we also leave our options open in terms of how we want to develop terminal complex and other aviation supporting functions like aircraft maintenance, etc. So we basically anticipate that the growth of our terminal complex and all the associated processing capacity, baggage systems, gates and stands and aprons will basically continue to grow. Terminal 1 will continue to grow east and northeast, and Terminal 3 we can grow west and northwest to keep a contiguous kind of terminal complex. And we also leave ourselves open options and evaluating these options to eventually also have something in the midfield, as shown with this hatched area. And surely, we still protect for the 6th runway, but we don't think we need that, to meet the anticipated demand. So next slide, please. So, going back to the, so we talk about the benefits, and we also talk about our impacts and what impacts our operations mean for our communities. So we basically are very committed to actually growing responsibly, and by that we mean a number of a range of activities and initiatives that we undertake. So 4 pillars identified on this slide that you see is, I will go from right to left. So Southern Ontario Airport Network. So we understand that there is a regional demand and there is a regional network of airports, and we engaged our regional airports to work together and find the best way to run this as an airport system for the whole region and for the benefit of all of us. We also understand that transit is a burning issue, and that you can only build so many Highway 400 series, and that we need to get smarter and we need to get better. So transit is certainly something we look at. Other airports have much higher transit ridership, both passengers and employees, and so part of our initiatives to mitigate our impacts is basically to bring more transit. And Regional Transit Center, that you must have read in the press over the last year or two, speaks loud about that. And so we're looking to engage all levels of government and other stakeholders to really improve that a lot. That's our target. Then we have a really exemplar environmental management system. We're I think the first North American airport to be ISO, that's International Standards Organization 14,000 certified for our environmental management program. And so we have a number of things that we looked at, from water, stormwater, air quality, waste management, and we have set ourselves, some targets that we are meeting or exceeding already as far as the greenhouse gas emissions and, reducing our carbon footprint. And also one thing I would like to point out, I hope I still have time, is that we just recently been accredited to level 3 airport carbon accreditation by Airport Council International. So we are now, in a relatively small group of airports that have reached level 3. There is only 4 levels. So level 3 is optimization and level 4 is neutrality. So moving on to the final pillar, and that is the noise management. And we are really committed to actually having a strong noise management plan, an action plan, and to do everything we can to really minimize the negative impacts that our operations create for our communities. So with that in mind, I would like to hand it back to Hilary to tell us more about our 5-year noise management plan. Thank you.
Thanks so much, George. Good work, George. That takes a lot of planning. It's like having a baby, isn't it? Yes. Yeah, okay. So now we're going to, having heard that presentation from George about the draft master plan, we want to turn our attention now to the noise management action plan. This plan, as I said earlier, is the result of thousands of hours of research based on best practices at international airports, feedback from our summer consultations, which many of you participated in, and the residents reference panel. And why does it matter? Well, it matters because we've made a commitment to the community to introduce meaningful action in terms of noise management and to be responsive to your concerns. Residents have spoken and we have listened. As you're about to learn from Robin, who's going to take us through the plan in just a few moments, but before she gets started, I'd like to address one area in which we've heard a lot of feedback over the last few months, and that's noise sharing. Many of you will recall that this is one of the 6 ideas which the GTAA has been studying. In our research, we identified that many top-tier international airports provide respite from noise by operating runway programs that are designed around the premise of noise sharing among affected communities. The survey on noise fairness and airport growth took the pulse of the community's interest in such a program here in the GTA. We received more than 2,500 responses from both randomly selected residents from across the GTA and those who completed the survey online that was made available to all. Most respondents, I should say, from the group of randomly selected residents were willing to accept slightly more noise over their homes in order to provide respite. In contrast, more than half the respondents of the online survey indicated that they were not at all willing to accept more noise over their houses in order to offer respite to neighborhoods with very frequent or very loud noise. As a result, the residents' reference panel took all that information in and recommended that the GTAA explore all other options to mitigate noise on the ground before implementing a noise sharing program. For example, a quieter fleet incentive program or insulation. Moreover, the residents' reference panel recommended that noise sharing should only be pursued if respite afforded to communities is both meaningful and predictable. Now, we've taken this feedback into consideration for the action plan you're about to see. And what does it mean for Idea 5 in particular, which is the study of the Summer Weekend Runway Alternation program? Well, our preliminary technical analysis has told us that a weekend alternation program that includes the north and south runways cannot deliver predictable and meaningful respite. We might be able to do it for an hour here or there on a Saturday or Sunday during the summer, but we don't think this is either meaningful nor is it predictable for our communities. And with that, we will not continue to study and consult on a weekend runway alternation program that includes the north and south runways at this time. As we heard from the residents' reference panel, we will turn our attention to making more meaningful progress on our noise management action plan, which you're about to see, and we will also continue to explore an alternation program only for our east and west operation at this time. Analysis shows that this approach may give residents on the final approach in east and west communities some predictable respite. We expect to consult on this early in the new year. I do want to highlight that this noise sharing program was only for the summer weekends in times of low traffic, and it is not a change to how we regularly operate. Additionally, this is not an announcement that we are going to stop using the north-south runways and use the east-west runways more. We will use these runways as necessary to support our operations. We will share more details about the east-west noise sharing during our consultations early next year. While airport noise can't be eliminated entirely, the end goal of the 2018 to 2022 Noise Management Action Plan is to make Toronto Pearson an international leader in aviation noise management. As you're about to see, we've taken a variety of feedback and research into consideration, all of which Robin will tell you about to make this a robust and practical plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robin to take us through that document.
Thank you. I will talk plenty loud. It's likely I also might talk plenty fast. So if that starts to happen, just alert me and I'll try to slow down. Thank you. So we're about to share with you our 2018 to 2022 Noise Management Action Plan. What is an action plan? Well, basically it's a plan to look at our noise management program. Noise management, there is no single solution to addressing and managing noise, but there are a series of tools in our toolkit that we think in combination can help move the dial on impacts, and that's a noise management program. We have a noise management program at the GTAA that follows the international approach and includes a series of programs and policies and procedures that help mitigate our impacts. An action plan is a 5-year plan that looks at that and sort of goes out and validates that our plan is robust and helps introduce some new elements. We are wrapping up the 5th year on our current noise management action plan. So some of the things that we've been doing over these past 5 years include the Noise Management Best Practices Report, which we released at the last CENAC. The installation of 8 new noise monitoring terminals so that we now have a suite of 25 NMTs out in the community. And I'm happy to report that they are all installed and recording up into WebTrack. We removed, in the past 5 years, we removed any geographical barriers to submitting noise complaints so that there was no longer that artificial 10 nautical mile barrier, and we're accepting complaints from all residents who are impacted by operation in and out of Toronto Pearson. And we also work to standardize our enforcement process so that we are tracking 100% of the flights that are operating out of Pearson to make sure that they're flying according to procedure. And another thing we did this year, over these past 5 years, is we expanded our noise committee to include representation from the regions of Durham, York, and Halton as well. But as we look ahead, and as Hilary said, putting forward a more meaningful action plan that commits to action over the next 5 years, I just want to walk you through some of the inputs that got us there. We're often asked by residents about what other airports are doing to manage noise or how their input is reflected in our plans and decisions. It was so important and fundamental to us to learn from that feedback and build on that for this plan. The inputs to help us develop this next noise management action plan include our previous noise management action plan and what we learned and put into place. The best practices report, which I alluded to, that looked at 26 airports worldwide at 11 elements of their noise management programs to come forward with 30 recommendations for us. Our residents reference panel on airport growth and noise fairness, which was made up of 36 randomly selected residents, heavily weighted towards people who are impacted by airport operations. And one of our biggest asks of the reference panel, I want to note, is to give us the values and principles that will guide our decisions going forward to ensure that their voice of the community is reflected in the choices we make going forward. The feedback from the survey on airport growth and noise fairness was, of course, an input, as well as the elements of our master plan. Additional considerations include the Toronto Noise Mitigation Initiatives, which are the 6 noise mitigation ideas that are currently under technical review and analysis, and NAV Canada's own independent airspace noise review and any continued collaboration around that. Our values and guiding principles, as I mentioned, that these were co-created with the community, include safety, governance, transformative investments, environment, human-centered, and connectivity. We have been asked to make sure that our plans going forward reflect these values, and that we implement them with the following guiding principles of leadership, accountability, and clear communication. And I just want to take a moment to pause that naturally safety is first, because safety always comes first. This includes the safety and security of our passengers, our airlines, our surrounding communities, and our airport employees. If we were not safe, we would not be allowed to operate. Our action plan is 10 commitments that will challenge us to do better. These 10 commitments will help us deliver on these 9 noise management tools going forward. So now I'd like to share with you what our 10 commitments are that make up our 2018 to 2022 Noise Management Action Plan. Number 1, we will collaborate better as an industry. We heard this loud and clear from the reference panel. We heard this loud and clear in Helios's own independent review for NAV Canada, and we hear this very loud and clear at CENAC meetings. We must collaborate better as an industry. And so we will work to deliver on the expectations around the Industry Noise Management Forum and work with NAV Canada on that, as well as to be more clear with residents about our roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities. You can't trust us if you don't understand us, and we know we must do more to do that. We will work smarter with our communities. We have heard also loud and clear that we must identify new ways for residents to provide input and ensure wider community involvement. And we also heard from the best practices study that the committee makeup and work plan of our CENAC does not hit international standards, and so we are committed to reviewing that and making sure that there is a more robust community noise committee where residents feel that they can participate. We will work to protect our neighbors. First and foremost, this will involve studying and looking and developing a voluntary noise insulation program. We will also, as a start, investigate a pilot program that would provide funding to nearby schools for air conditioning systems. We've actually already heard word that the Toronto District School Board is very interested in this program and are aware that other airports do this, so we think that's a good foot going forward. We will work with municipalities for more stringent rezoning requirements and do what we can to work with real estate agents so that residents understand when they're moving into a community impacted by airport operations. We will help our neighbors sleep better. As Hillary mentioned, we know that we must immediately explore our changes to our night flight restriction program. We know from the best practices study that it's not necessarily aligned with best practice, and we certainly hear loud and clear from residents that it's an area of particular concern. We will continue to review the preferential runway system to make sure that it flies over the least amount of residents possible during the restricted hours or the nighttime hours. But I should add here as well that as part of the 6 ideas, ideas 1 and pardon our vernacular, ideas 1, which is looking at a new nighttime arrival path, as well as idea 2, which is looking at a new nighttime departure path, also move forward. We think that there is some great opportunity there. We have been asked to make a point of explaining why night flights are important to the economy. We say that a lot, but people want more validation behind that. We will do that. And over time, we will even explore changes to the landing fee so that there is maybe a bit of an incentive or a premium on night flights. We will have Canada's quietest fleet. You heard us announce at the last CENAC that we will pursue a quieter fleet incentive program, which starts with asking airlines to any airlines using the A320 aircraft to retrofit to address the whine. We've already begun to speak to airlines about this, and we will continue to move that forward. A quieter fleet incentive program is also a critical element of a Fly Quiet program. We will also continue to pursue that. Oh, actually, I want to go back to that one, sorry. We will also continue to work with our partners on new initiatives for flight paths that reduce the exposure and the number of people who are overflown. And like I mentioned, ideas 1 and 2 from our 6 noise mitigation initiatives are a good step forward in that direction. We will do more to understand our impacts. We will improve our noise complaint process to allow for deeper analysis. And we will also work with you to create clear and standard noise reports so that we can all better understand the impacts that you're experiencing. We will also support research that works to understand the link between impacts and noise annoyance. We will limit surprises. I'm sure many of you are here because you were surprised this spring. We will launch a new noise management website that has better information about how we operate and what you can expect, and we will continue to deliver on an improved construction communications protocol, as well as deliver on the expectations of the industry's airspace change and communications protocol. We will continue to take care of our environment. George spoke to our great environmental services program, and we will continue to deepen and drive that. And we will intensify our efforts to understand and mitigate our environmental impacts. And perhaps interestingly, this came also loud and clear from the residents' reference panel. We often speak to the economic benefits of the airport growth, but we need to do more to explain the social and environmental impacts and benefits as well so that that all balances out as a full story. And we will begin to understand how we can better do that. We will lift up our communities. This speaks to the guiding principle of transformative investment. An airport of this size is a regional economic player and employer, of course, but we also must play a role in building our region up. We will support that growth through pursuing our regional transit center initiative, as well as the SON, the airport network. And we have a community investment program called the Propeller Project, which works to invest in local communities to continue to develop them and ensure that they stay vital. And we will continue to drive and grow that program forward. We will always look for ways to improve. We will move forward and consult and implement and trial where consultation suggests we should on the Toronto noise mitigation initiatives. We will continue to provide an annual update on this plan and how we are tracking against the expected deliverables. And we will commission a new benchmarking and best practices review at the end of these 5 years to see how we did and how we balance out against other international airports. These are a lot of big ideas. We're very excited about them. But what does that really mean for 2018? So here's a high-level timeline and what we think to expect over the course of the 5 years. I will say we do have a printed document that will be available for you when you leave the room, and the timeline will be available there. But right now, I'd just like to take a moment to walk you through what our 2018 work plan will look like and what you can start to expect from us in the next year. We will start by moving forward with the night flight restrictions and explore changes to our program, as well as publish a report on why night flights are important to the economy. We will continue to pursue our quieter fleet initiative and make sure that the deadline of having a quieter fleet incentive program by 2020, is in place. In terms of land use planning, noise insulation will be no small feat. We are Canada's first airport to explore this, and we have to find a solution and a way to implement a program that works for us. What works for Frankfurt or what works for San Francisco isn't going to work here. So we will immediately start that initiative and start by getting a consultant on board to guide us starting in 2018. And we will reach out to the school boards to explore the air conditioning pilot. But like I mentioned, they've already reached out to us, so that one's already going along. So I'm pretty excited. We will improve our noise complaint process as well as our reporting. So we will get started on that right away. We will also get started on the understanding our impacts better and the noise reporting and metrics. This is really critically important because we need to better understand the metrics and the impacts so that then we can subsequently build out a Fly Quiet program. A Fly Quiet program is one that ranks airlines according to fleet noise and how they adopt procedures and flying quieter procedures. But if we don't have any metrics against which to benchmark them, then that program's going to be meaningless. And so we have to move forward with developing those metrics. In terms of runway usage, as Hilary mentioned, we will continue to explore the technical analysis of Idea 5, the Summer Weekend Runway Alternation, including the east-west operations only. We do think that there are some opportunities for respite, and we look forward to sharing that with you in the early 2018, as well as the review of our existing nighttime preferential runway system. And on the communications, outreach, and committee side of the tools, one of the first things we will start in 2018 as well is to work with our existing CENAC committee to look at how we need to evolve that committee so that it responds to your expectations, their expectations, and our needs as well. And we will roll out the consultation on the Toronto Noise Mitigation Initiatives. We think, because this plan is very much built on your own input and expectations, that this will help us deliver on being the best airport in the world, starting with our own communities. And stay involved. Many of you probably already are signed up to our checking in e-newsletter, or you always are welcome to reach us at the Noise Management Office, and we'll look really forward to sending out an email when our new noise website is up to date as well. Thank you. So 2 more things before we hand it over to the floor for questions and comments. Michelle Bishop is going to come and join us and give you all an update on the NAV Canada airspace review. After all this time, I can't even keep all these studies straight. And then when Michelle is done, I'm going to come back up and update you on a couple of administrative items, and then we'll hand the floor back over to questions. So Michelle.
Although I have to say I'm a little scared of it. Absolutely. Just a very quick update. Most of you are well aware of, I see some copies in the audience of the what is referred to as the Helios report, a study that NAV Canada commissioned starting, we started back in May of 2016, announcing that we would intend to commission an independent look at Toronto's airspace to make sure that everything that could be done as far as the airspace procedures in order to make the operation quiet was being done. Helios, Beau-Redbourne, and Grand Lake were the experts brought in to conduct that study. They undertook consultation direct with the community in 3 separate rounds of consultation in 2016 and 2017. And in September, many of you I know attended the meeting meeting where they delivered their final report. At that time, this is their report. It is, for those of you who have not seen it, it is available on that website, torontoairspacereview.ca, which is their website. If anyone is looking for hard copies of it, you can simply send an email to service@navcanada.ca and give us your mailing address, and we'll mail out hard copies for those who are looking for them. It is a weighty tome that follows a fairly extensive study. It was a thorough examination of what the community concerns were. They provided 18 specific recommendations aimed at improving community noise impacts in this region. They made very specific recommendations dealing with noise at source in the aircraft, and some of that is the A320 issue that Robin mentioned. They made recommendations around improving collaboration, about changes to procedures that would result in quieter operations, things like low power, low drag approaches to reduce noise on approach, continuous descent approaches that are aimed at getting the aircraft a little higher in portions of the approach. They made some recommendations around steeper approaches, actually changing the angle at which aircraft come into the airport, and some complex recommendations around reducing the need for high-low, which is a separation standard that we use when we are arriving to different runways at the airport. They also made some very specific recommendations around air traffic management procedures and new navigational technologies that airlines have on board the aircraft, and how NAV Canada may be able to encourage airlines to equip with those because of the benefits that they deliver. And they made some recommendations around transparency and public reporting on things like how we are doing at achieving continuous descent, and on developing specific performance targets for annual improvements in those rates. This is NAV Canada's response. When the report came out, we indicated that we would respond in a substantive fashion within 60 days of receiving the Helios report ourselves. So our report was released on the 15th of November. A copy of it is available on our website. We did address each of the Helios recommendations in turn, and you can see that most of those have been accepted, and in the few cases where they weren't, we provided a fairly clear explanation of why. We also provided for each recommendation, we laid out an implementation plan and a timeline, so that we've made some public commitments that we will adhere to. And we took the opportunity in this report, because there had been an appetite for people to get an update on what was going on with the 6 initiatives. We provided an update in an appendix on the first 4 of the 6 initiatives for which NAV Canada is responsible. And as Robin mentioned, we will be taking those to the community for broad public consultation starting later this winter. So that's all the update I had on that, but I do encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the Helios report or the company's response, to do so, and at any time you can send us questions if you have on that. Thank you.
So, first, we're running on schedule, so that's great. Just a few regular items from me before we hand it over to you and the floor. First, I'm happy to share that you will be able to find online the regular complaint statistics reports that we generally provide at CENAC meetings. They will all be available online this evening. We did give you a quick handout tonight, but normally there is a broader suite of reports available, and will all be online, so happy to report on that. And kudos to the team. You've been keeping us busy this year. I also wanted to report at the last CENAC meeting, the last couple CENAC meetings, we recently had a request to write a letter to Health Canada to ask that Health Canada is accountable for advising on the human health impacts of aircraft noise. And their last advisory report to Transport Canada dates back to 2010. So we had written them a letter on behalf of you, and the CENAC had written a letter on behalf of you to Health Canada to ask them to update that study. We have received a response back from Health Canada that is also available online. They indicate that they are familiar with a lot of research going on in the issue of human health impact of aircraft noise, but at this time they are not considering undertaking their own study or updating their advisory report to Transport Canada. And I see some folks shaking their heads, and we're a little worried about that response too. So our commitment going forward in the next year is to go down and go up and meet with Health Canada and ask them to reconsider that opinion. So that'll be our next steps on that. All that information is available online. And finally, at the last meeting, residents from the CAAS committee issued a series of requests that we did respond to, and that response is also now available online. In addition to that, all the presentations from this evening, as well as I'm sure this very riveting recording, and the Noise Management Action Plan will also all be available online, and they might already be. So that's the end of sort of the official business and report back on the action items. So I'll hand it back over to Jim.
Thank you, Robin. So we have time for questions, and just a couple of ground rules. We just have one conversation, please, and please wait for the response to be completed before you have a secondary question if you do, so that we have one conversation, everybody can hear it. We're going to use roving mics again. That didn't work that well last time. The roving mics turned into standing human microphone stands. They will get to you. I commit to you, we're going to get to as many questions as we possibly can in a fair way. So there's going to be a couple of roving mics around. Just wave at them, and they'll come to you, and you can pose your question. Keep your question comment brief so we can get to as many as possible, please. And if I could ask that we have some decorum so that we can hear the responses and we have a fruitful conversation and hear your feedback and comments. So you're going to start here, and then we're going to come over to Mark on the second one. I have a second question over here from Mark. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Jenny Ribeiro. I live in Long Branch. I want to thank you for bringing matters to discussion. We're all here and can agree that economic growth is a good direction. We can agree, as I'm sure you do, that night flights are detrimental to one's sleep pattern, health and well-being, that weekend flights are detrimental and infringe on our enjoyment of our outdoor life. We need to work together to achieve economic growth and responsible planning for a livable city. This must include human factor, safety, and environmental impacts. So I'm really pleased to see what you have presented, and I'm hoping that you will, in the next 5 years, keep on that. During the 1991 environmental assessment, this is for Transport Canada. We have somebody here from Transport Canada. During the 1991 environmental assessment, Transport Canada committed to using the new north-south runway only when it was required, when strong crosswinds prevented the use of higher capacity east-west runways. This is written in the environmental impact statement, the EIS summary, and Transport Canada's response to the panel's report in 1993. Does Transport Canada intend to live up to its commitment? If not, why not? If yes, how does it monitor the GTAA's and NAV Canada's compliance?
So the question is, do you want a response from Transport Canada? Do they intend to live up to the EIS summary from 1993 about the north-south runway?
Correct.
Okay. Turn it over to Transport Canada to respond.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, the Transport Canada transferred the day-to-day operations of Pearson Airport back in 1996. We signed the ground lease at that time, and the day-to-day operations are the responsibility of the GTAA, and they are expected, they're obligated to operate in accordance with our Canadian aviation regulations. And the ground lease itself. That document that you reference does not form part of the CARS, the Canadian Aviation Regulations, or the ground lease. They do not, that document does not limit the day-to-day operation of the airport, but they are expected to operate in accordance with the regs, Canadian aviation regs, and the ground lease, and we monitor that fairly robustly.
Okay, thank you for that. Mark up here from AAS had a question, so is there a microphone that can come up to Mark? Right here. Yep.
You take it away from me? Mark Kouis, I'm with the Community Alliance for Air Safety. We're currently representing 19 communities around the GTA. But if we look at the census, it's close to 1 million people that are concerned about what's going on at the airport. So first of all, thank you to everyone on the panel. I thought today was a very humble and professional approach as compared to some of the CENAC meetings we've had before. I think actions are more than everything than words, so let's see what happens. So thank you. Start with that. I haven't seen an email from you folks on the response to our questions, so that was an hour ago. So if there's something out there or a link to our 8 questions.
Sure, it was yesterday.
Okay.
And it's posted online.
It's supposed
we'll have a look. We looked about an hour ago.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that you know that CAS is still on high alert. Fortunately, still have to wear these things. We're ensuring, our goal is to ensure that Transport Canada and the GTA and NAV Canada and the airlines are held accountable to the rules. And when the rules are broken, we need to make sure that the rules are enforced and fines are put in place. CAS is now active in Ottawa, and we're regularly traveling to Ottawa to ensure our concerns are being heard. Very important thing here is when we're learning the Transport Safety Board is saying that self-policing is not happening. So to the gentleman from Transport Canada, that's the process that we've been educated on what's happening with the GTA and NAV Canada, and it's not working, and that comes from the highest levels of the Transport Safety Board. Currently, 60% of the recommendations coming from the Transport Safety Board are acknowledged, where the rest of the transportations are close to 90%, so there's something falling behind. There's a watch list in place right now, and the watch list includes unstable approaches, runway overruns, risk of collision on runways. These are things that are top of mind and are being tracked by the Transportation Safety Board today. CAS is glad to see our government has put together a GTAA caucus, and it's pretty quiet right now, but we have 20 members of parliament that are getting together to make sure that the GTA is held in compliance, and CAS has open dialogue with that group. Industry experts continue to come to us and say, stay on track. Stay on safety, stay on message. We need to get Canada's aviation industry back where it was 20 years ago. We're not anti-airport, we're not anti-growth. We just need to grow responsibly, as has been said here. The GTA has assured us that safety is still top of the list. Their goal is still to double the aircraft, actually the people that are being transported by aircraft. When I look at the land program, it reminds me of the new phenomena called tiny homes, where you're trying to raise a family in a 600 square foot home. That's what I was thinking about when I saw that map, compared to all the other major airports around the world. We believe that the House is still not in order, and you're not demonstrating the most basic operational levels of excellence. And I'll be specific. Pilots Association still encourages their members to be vigilant when landing at Pearson. The number of incidents under investigation at Toronto Pearson International Airport continues to grow. Just last Saturday, 777 EVA Airlines in the de-icing area drove into a pole. Sparks were reported on the wing by people who were on the plane. And if anyone is interested, there's 171,000 liters of fuel in a fully loaded Boeing 777. The operations at that particular location in de-icing is the responsibility of the GTAA, not NAV Canada. So please be assured, CAS is all hands on deck. We're going to ensure best practices are held, all rules are followed, and for those that don't follow the rules, they will be investigated, and we will track those. We're not investigating them. There's lots of groups that are doing that, but we're going to track it and publish it and make sure that those who are breaking the rules are going to get prosecuted and fined. That could be GTA, that could be NAV Canada, that could be the airlines. We want people to follow the rules. When people follow the rules, we'll have safe airports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was very clear. Microphones, I can't see the microphone runners so because of the lights. So just to be fair and get your way through the room, so there's one here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Debbie Weinberg. I'm from the Thornhill area. We've lived in the area for 26 years. We're by the 407, like Dufferin 407 area. And we've noticed in the last few years that the flights through the night between 12:30 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. has increased quite a bit. We usually actually hear them starting now about 4:30, 5 a.m. in the morning, and they come literally one after another. So I don't know what our rights are, because it says here, which I actually got a reply saying that, let me just find it right here. We are under the approach to runway 23, because it's coming, like arrivals coming in. You would certainly be able to observe aircraft over flight. Unfortunately, given your location, there's little flexibility in terms of the location of the flight path as aircraft are lining up with the runway to land. How does that help us? That is not reassuring at all. So, like, we are losing sleep. I quite often have to sleep with earplugs in my ears. The planes sound as if they're literally landing on our house. That's what they sound like. And like I said, we've lived in the area 26 years. It's been primarily like in the last 5 years. But the last few months, though, it says here that it's 3% of flights during that time. Seems like it's more like 50% lately from what we're hearing between like 5 a.m. and 6:30 in the morning. Like, we're up every morning at 5 a.m. because of the planes arriving. So we'd like to know what's going to be done about that.
And the question is about the night flights, and they seem to be increasing. And you're at the 407 in Dufferin area, and the response said that they're approaching 23. So what is happening as far as night flights? So I'll turn it back over to Robin to respond to that. Is that, or Hillary?
So I guess I'll start off by saying that we understand and recognize that night flights have a higher impact, and that is technically reflected when we do things like develop contours. They have a higher impact that's represented within the contour itself. There is a limit. I know this isn't going to make you feel any happier about the flights that are coming in the night. There is a limit on the number of flights that come in the evening. And I don't know if Michelle wants to add anything in terms of the ideas 1 through 6 and what you're looking at.
Fairly strict guidelines on how the aircraft line up for the runway, and we are working towards trying to look at where there are some industrial corridors that we may be able to use in order to design night flight paths that would be used specifically for operations during those hours that may fly over less people, but there are limitations to how much we can do that given how the aircraft need to line up for the runway for safe operation.
Okay, thank you.
And those are the flight paths that we were referring to that will be going to consultation in the next few months.
Mm-hmm. You know, as I look at the noise management action plan that we shared, I think that I just look back at studying the night flights and insulation. Those could be things that start to address your concerns. But in a heavily residential metropolis, it is hard it's hard to identify non-residential areas through which the planes can land. And that's final approach you're in.
Okay, thank you. We'll move back to the back here. Please introduce yourself.
Tony Natalizio. I like GTAA 2.0, but now let's go back to GTAA 1.0. On October 13th, I wrote an email to the CENAC asking a few questions, and I have yet to receive any answer to my questions. I will have to make a note not to send messages on Friday the 13th, because obviously it's not working.
I promise you that's not the reason.
No,
I'm going to give you my name and email address. You can find my email, and I will certainly welcome your answers.
Yeah, no, I do apologize. I actually remember reading your email. and fairly confident we did respond. Sometimes we send emails back from an email called community engagement, from, and I don't know if there's something happening going on there.
Spam.
Yeah, but we'll follow up on that because I absolutely actually remember your email.
In any case,
And, in fact, it was an email about how we use the north-south runways, right?
no.
No?
No.
Apologies.
Basically, there were two points. One is that I wanted to find out a little bit more about noise levels in my neighborhood. I live just south of the airport, very noisy place. You're operating with a noise exposure forecast that is so out of date, it doesn't even reflect the second north-south runway. So that really tells me that the noise levels that are being discussed about with general public and politicians to make it look like we're really doing well here are so out of date that, you know, it scares me. The second item was that I wanted a little bit more information from the CENAC annual reports. And the last one that was on the website was 2012. Mm-hmm. And so I was wondering whether the website could be updated to reflect the more current reports. And a week later, I went up there, and both the NEF disappeared and the annual CENAC reports disappeared from the website.
Okay, so your 2 points were the noise exposure forecast does not include the second north-south runway. Is there a response to that?
So I guess what I would say is, yes, we recognize that the approach to developing contours is a bit outdated, and so for this submission, we've taken a new approach called a multi-system envelope approach, which is used at some other Canadian airports as well, and we'll be bringing that forward to communities and municipalities to discuss. But also recognize that contours are not a perfect way to demonstrate how that noise is an irritant. So, you know, we have to look at that and understand that as well, because no matter how many times we tell you that you don't live under an NEF 30 contour, it doesn't mean that you're not irritated by noise. So we're trying to make sure we address that as well.
And the second point was the missing CENAC reports, but
Sure. Sorry. We have actually taken to reporting on the previous year's annual complaint stats each year at CENAC, and so those reports are actually available in a different location. But we will follow up, and we can send you the links to all of those, absolutely.
So they'll follow up on your email.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Overdue, I apologize.
The reports themselves were really very, how shall I say, very weak when it came to noise management. Noise management in those reports really means managing the complaints. Now, you mentioned earlier that there's many noise monitoring stations around the airport, and a few more will be added. It would really be nice to have not only the measurements published, but also your analysis of the measurements, because that's really very important. And that would tell me whether I should be concerned or not.
We wholeheartedly agree, and that is why like I said, one of the key deliverables of this 5-year action plan and what will start next year is using the data that's available to us to better report on our impacts and work with you, the community, to start to represent that data in a way that's meaningful and understandable. That's one of our top priorities. We agree with you wholeheartedly.
Thank you. I look forward to that. I would like to just follow on the earlier question about night flights.
There's lots of other questions too. So just,
why
if you could be
why
brief.
do we need to have night flights? Really? There are many airports that don't have night flights, period.
Actually, Tony, the best practices report that we released, and we can send you the link at the last meeting, looked at what a lot comparable airports do in their night flight restriction program, and you can sort of understand that. But again, as you understood, one of the first things we also know we need to do is explain why we do need night flights and help everyone understand that a little bit better. We've been asked to do that.
Okay, next question over in this area. Do we have someone here with a... I can't see my microphone. Right here, sorry. Go ahead. Wave at me so I can see you. With
Yes,
the
hi,
lights.
my name's Ken Burford, and I live in the Young Davisville area of Toronto. I got a couple questions. One, Helios dealt with many noise sharing options in their report. I'm just curious to know, when did noise sharing become only runway alternation to Toronto Pearson and NAV Canada? That's my first question.
So the question is about noise sharing, and when did it become part of the noise reduction?
I'll address that first, Robin, if you want, and then noise sharing, when we were looking at noise sharing regimes around the world, and that was part of what we looked at when we were coming up with the 6 initiatives. The 6 initiatives was very much focused on a weekend runway alternation program in that initiative number 5. That's what the proposal was, and that's why the debate emerged afterwards. We do know that there were proposals and suggestions about multiple flight paths in other portions of the flight path, and Helios looked at that issue in depth, specifically the downwind. There were suggestions for multiple downwinds, and that suggestion was rejected in the Helios report. It was not one of their recommendations.
And just curious to know, why did NAV Canada not discuss any of those other things that Helios did not recommend in the report? NAV Canada seemed to be only focusing on the recommendations and said nothing about the other stuff. And didn't offer
Yes.
any suggestions of their own.
We had offered suggestions of our own previously. That's how that analysis of the 6 ideas came about. We had done community roundtables in the summer of 2015 on the 6 ideas. The community felt that they thought more could be done, and that's why an independent review was done. You're quite correct that the NAV Canada response that came out November 15 responded to what Helios actually recommended. We didn't make comments on things that they themselves had assessed over the period of a year and dismissed.
Just one other question. This is about the noise reporting. Are you going to implement, since you're going to enhance your noise reporting, and I'll ask this again, and I've asked it a million times, are you going to implement a noise reporting process for those of us under a concentrated flight path?
Yeah, we understand that we definitely need to review and reflect how we take in and take in complaints. Yes, yeah, that will absolutely be in scope.
This is the NMT.
Going to do it.
The reporting of the NMT data.
No, it's about how you can submit complaints and
No, it was noise reporting.
For those of us under concentrated jet paths,
some analysis of the concentration areas of noise.
No, this.
Yeah.
That's what he asked.
The process.
The process.
The complaint process. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to, have to get on the computer and log 80,000 complaints.
Yep. No, we
from
understand.
one person.
Yep.
I need a process to complain once about them all.
Sure. And we understand, we do know that there's some airports that do have a process to do that. And again, as I mentioned, we know as part of our complaint process that we need to sort of be asking and doing a deeper dive on other questions. So yes, we're going to look. Yeah, we're going to look at it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excuse me. Let's go to the next question over here.
I would say that the commitment is there to start to work on that. We certainly want to address the complaint process ourselves. It's very laborious, as you know. And so if everyone's in agreement that we should work on it, then that's great. If it's about when, then I guess we'll have to take that criticism and keep working on it.
Okay, we'll continue to work through the room, through that side, this side, and this side. So over to this side, please introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Yaur Katerkuya.
Microphone's not on.
My name is Javor Katerkulja. I'm a resident of Alderwood, and our area has been basically influenced in a horrible way by the patterns of flights, like especially when there is when we have extreme weather conditions, where when we have strong winds from northwest. Then we are impacted by landing on runways 33 are left or right, and in those periods, if there is a strong wind whole day long, it means that every single plane that is arriving to Toronto will land on one of those runways and will go directly over my house or over my neighbor's house in basically close vicinity. Those planes on average fly roughly at 2,500 feet. And noise that is registered on relevant monitoring stations, one would be James Bell School, which is actually at Lakeshore, which is 2 kilometers away from, close to Long Branch, but it's 2 kilometers away from my house. Another one would be in Markland Wood area, or Erskine, I think. I may not be labeling them correctly. I'm going to web track every time when those things happen. When we have those kind of weather conditions, we would have plane flying over our area, every half a minute there would be one plane flying and arriving over our homes. We can have literally 800 or more flights per day and night, basically 24 hours, over that area. And also that can last for days, because weather is not predictive. We know that actually we are going to get more extreme weather patterns over the years. We know there are more storms, more strong winds. So basically nobody can tell how many days this can last over that area. So noise that is recorded on those stations ranges anywhere from 75 decibels to 85, 89 decibels. How do I know that? I literally go to that WebTrack tool, I look into the area, and I'm looking what's happening with those planes that are flying and what was registered noise in those places. And so basically during night hours, we can have anything from 100 planes arriving, especially when there is extreme weather. It means that arrivals are pushed, so basically you can get more planes arriving later than naturally scheduled. So noise is out of this world, and it's pretty much continuous noise. It doesn't stop. And if you have 80 decibel noise and you're in a workplace, you would be required to wear protective gear, because you can get hear loss from that kind of exposure. We all know that those noise monitoring stations are located in local schools, which means that noise that is registered at 80 decibels, continuous noise, that's what kids in those schools are exposed to. And if those things are happening in the summer, where they actually go out, they can basically get sick, they can lose their hearing, not to mention tons and tons of exhaust fumes, horrible pollution that nobody monitors. There used to be a monitoring station, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit what was going on and how my life was impacted in the last few years. I apologize for being a little bit nervous or maybe a little bit upset. But the thing is that Environment Canada dismantled air pollution monitoring station that was at Horner Evans just before that increase in traffic and landing on 33 right and 33 left. So we can get, basically you can smell kerosene in the air, for 5 days. Sometimes we have those flights for 5 days. It doesn't stop. And then another thing, we speak about safety, how safety is very important. When you have thousands of planes, sometimes there could be 50, 60, or even 180 planes scheduled to arrive within 1 hour, and you can check those things on WebTrack. You can check if you actually go to arrival website of Pearson Airport, you can count how many planes are scheduled to arrive within 1 hour.
I hate to cut
And
you
there
off,
is
but
like
I want you to get to wrap
separation.
up. There's lots of other questions, please. Can I get you
Well,
to
okay,
wrap
I'm
up?
trying to say safety is jeopardized because you are trying to land too many planes in a very short period of time.
Yep.
On one of those planes, my husband was arriving from Frankfurt. It took that plane 3 times. They attempted landing 3 times. You are basically impacting our health. You are impacting our safety of the people on the board of those planes. That so-called noise monitoring facility, all they do is they count complaints. How's that relevant? Why do I have to go and check what was noise? And why do I have to click on every single plane that is arriving to see what was the altitude and what was the noise that that plane generated? Why those people are not doing that? Why they are not doing reports and analysis that would say, we have 1,000 planes in 1 day, and average noise was 80 decibels. And why nobody has any kind of, this is environmental disaster what is going on. We should have some sort of system that will warn people in schools, kids in schools, to stay inside on those days. Like if there is a fire or something, people would say it's dangerous for you to go out and breathe that air in. And all we have here is that it's okay to have plane from Varadero landing at 3 a.m. Why is that okay? It's okay because maybe GTA is going to make $30,000 on that landing. So that's the benefit. And all this like nice talking and being politically correct and having things scheduled to happen in 5-6 years from now, and in the meantime, well, too bad for you. You know that you are living in high impacted area. How that makes sense? How is that humane? If you have 80 decibels noise for 24 hours, that, I said many times, that is torture. If you go to United Nations, that would be considered torture.
Excuse me. Thank you.
I don't have...
So that's all been recorded. Thank you for that. We'll go to the middle here. One conversation, please. No heckling. That's not going to help the discussion.
I hope it's on. Is it on? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, mine will be a very much of a technical question. My name is Dr. Ramakrishnan. I'm a specialist in aeroacoustics and noise control. Now, I too disagree with you. NEF does have annoyance factor included in it. It calculates from EP and dB. Perceived noise level, high frequency noise annoyance is there. So I think, just to follow up this gentleman's question, what I'd like all of you now Canada to do is that publish NEP with all the recommendations they're doing and see how it actually affects various neighborhoods. It would be really a wonderful thing to do so that we can know that some noise control you're going to do with A320, how does it actually reduce the NEF projection? Because they do have, I'm sorry to say that I disagree with you, NEF includes annoyance in it. When we calculate NEF, it includes annoyance in it. It calculates from EP and dB.
No,
effective
I
perceived noise
recognize
level.
it includes annoyance, whether or not it reflects those outside of the NEF 30 who are also annoyed by noise. We know that we have to look at it other ways as well.
My point is that
yes.
You're coming up with 8 or 10 recommendations.
Yes.
We need to know how does it actually change your projections of the contours.
Absolutely.
So that he can know that his neighborhood went away from NEF 30 to NEF 28.
Yep.
So that he will know that he's got a better noise response right now. So I don't want you to disprove and take NEF off your website. I think it's a very important criterion.
Oh, we wouldn't. So
no, but
we'll continue to provide a contour.
He asked a question, and she told us that we are looking at something entirely different metric right now.
We're still looking to create a contour. Absolutely.
Yeah, but he found out that it's not there on your website anymore.
The existing contour is on our website, and we're just updating it.
Okay.
That's all.
I think in addition to do this, you should also look at, for each recommendation, how does the NEP changes? How does the NEP changes so that I live in a topic center, I will know that my NEF went down from about 30 to 27. I know that means that you guys are doing a good job.
We have for
Right now, it's all recommendations with no proof.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll go over to here. Do you have a question here? Yep. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Joe Silva, Rockwood Homeowners Association. Just for those of you who don't know what Rockwood is, we are the closest community to the airport. We sit on the northeast corner of Mississauga. Planes fly over my community at 300 to 500 feet, not 2,000 feet or 2,500 feet. So we have some serious issues, but I don't want to talk about that really today. I want to talk about something else. You mentioned, Robin, that you're looking at the A320 retrofit, 2 years. Aircraft go into maintenance, I guess on a regular basis. Why not 1 year? Why not 2019?
So the question is, can we speed up the A320 retrofit?
The question is, why are you not pushing for the A320 retrofit, or issue be push the airlines to fix it by the end of 2019, not 2020? That's my question.
So just on the A320, Joe, we have reached out. So we wrote to all the carriers operating at Toronto Pearson. We've reached out and followed up with them, had meetings with our incumbent carriers to talk about it. And we really do believe that they understand the importance of managing the impact on local communities, and we're going to keep after them.
But are you making it mandatory, or are also you prepared to prevent them from using those aircraft if they do not meet the mandate of the year, at the end of 2018? Not simply fine them, just say if you're using that aircraft that's not being fixed.
We announced at the last CENAC meeting that that's what we're doing.
Yeah, but are you prepared to stop them
we're
from
on
coming
it.
in?
They're following it up.
They're following it up, okay.
Yep.
My other question is regarding the north-south operations. When you were departing, when you have to because of weather conditions, to the south, why are you continuing to use 15 right as a departure runway when it introduces a higher level of risk and safety for those aircraft departing at 15 right when they have to cross 15 left, which you're using as a landing runway? So you got aircraft departing on 15 right, they're crossing a live runway 15 left. That's a higher risk of operation as if you're to reverse that operation. When are you going to stop using that 15 right as a departure runway? It's much shorter than the 15 left, so therefore I don't think it's as safe to be as a departure runway.
So the question's about safety and the use of the two
question is about
runways.
safety and the use of 15 right and 15 left, using 15 right as a departure, not 15 left.
So Joe, you raise a good point about crossing runways, and that is something that we discussed with NAV Canada about the operation of departures on that. Can you hear me now? We good?
Yeah.
So crossing runways, we did come up with a ground flow that does not require the departures to cross the arrival runway. So they flow down and around to the south of the airport and then back up to the north. So they do taxi longer, but they do not cross the active runway in the interest of safety.
But to my opinion, if you're to flow the other way around, you're landing 15 right, you actually go down, heading south, and you've got 2 taxiways that you can bring aircraft back up. You also got 2 runways to the south, which at that point are not being used, 2 more taxi routes to get aircraft back to the terminal if they're landing on 15 right. Much safer operation. Have a look at it, please.
Okay. So we'll continue to look at that from a safety perspective, and we're going back over to this side here. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Rich Matthews. I have 3 questions. First one, I just need clarification on one of the slides. I'm just going to read it so you can kind of dumb it down back to me. Preliminary technical analysis shows a summer weekend alternation program that includes north-south and east-west runways cannot deliver predictable and meaningful respite. We will not continue to study and consult on a summer weekend runway alternation program that includes north-south runways at this time. We will continue to explore a program with east-west operation. Analysis shows that this approach may give residents on final approach some predictable respite. It's that last sentence. Are you just talking about east-west, or are you, okay, just east-west?
Yeah.
Okay. Second question I had was the decibel levels that you measure on the measurement locations. Are those posted on your website?
Yes. Yeah, they're available through the web track tool.
The live ones are.
Yeah.
Is there like
regular noise reports? No, we currently don't do any
okay.
regularly. That's big task for us going forward.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last one is the arrivals management software. Is that something that you guys are actively looking at? Is that something that's kind of plan B? How is that kind of being approached?
The AMAN system, it's in, if you look at our response to the report, we've indicated we have purchased an AMAN system, and we are currently in the process of testing that system right now. Tests will occur in Toronto, and I'm looking at Dave, deployment is late 2018.
Spring is the implementation and
yep.
operational by the summer?
Operational, yep.
Spring operational?
Yep.
Spring 2018.
Spring test and operational
yep.
summer.
So we have bought it for the 4 major airports, and first deployment will be Pearson.
Thank you.
Great. Let's go to the middle here. Yeah, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Jim Carson. I live in South Etobicoke.
Okay.
Some of these stories scare the bejeebus out of me. I mean, we don't really have a lot of issues down there. We understand that, you know, when weather...
Just hold the mic a little closer so everybody can hear you.
When weather dictates, we know they have to go north and south. What happened this spring with the renovations, and we understand that those have to happen from time to time. But those airplanes, I could almost reach out and touch them. Yes. And some of these stories where, you know, people can't sleep at night, if that was to happen in my area, I don't know what I'd do.
You'd get pissed off, wouldn't you?
Well, a little bit.
Excuse me.
So my question is about IDF 5. You're saying that you're not going to do that at this time. At what point might you look at using or utilizing north-south more than you are now? If it's not now, when?
Well, so I think you're asking 2 different questions. One would be on alternation and whether or not we're going to ever continue to look at runway alternation, including north-south. And the commitment through the residence reference panel is that we won't look at something if it can't be predictable or meaningful, and that we have to work on our noise management action plan and make meaningful progress there. So beyond that, which is a 5-year time horizon, you know, I can't take anything off the table, because what we're trying to do is manage to balance the growth of the airport with the impacts and to accommodate everyone's interests. And that's certainly not easy, but that's what we're doing.
Just a quick follow-up. So you're telling me I have 5 years before I need to sell my home?
No, I'm telling you that we have an action plan that stretches out over the 5 years. You saw the work plan.
Let's have one conversation.
And we're working very hard on it. We're working on insulation. We're working on a quieter fleet incentive program. We're working on many aspects. The A320s we've started to work on. So that's all underway.
Just one more. I just appreciate all the work you guys are doing. I know it's very difficult.
Oh, thanks very much.
Thank you for that. Question back here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chris. I reside in Halton Hills. I've attended many of these meetings, and the person to my left is here at his first meeting for CENAC. First of all, this is not a CENAC meeting again, because my regional councillor and representative is in the audience, and he's not part of the panel here, and he's not able to set the agenda. It's quite clear that what we're hearing again, and we hear time and time again, is that CYYZ is unsafe. Transport Canada, Toronto Pearson is unsafe and has been operating as such for many years. That's why a number of us are here, because we are tortured, we are abused, we are harassed, we are assaulted. Transport Canada, you need to intervene. There needs to be a policy, procedure, a change in regulations and policies here. We saw that there's a mandate at the airport to live up to the economic growth and capacity. There must be a mandate, there must be policies, there must be regulations to stop the airport on imposing what municipalities, residents can do in their area. Insulation may be nice, that's not a solution. That's not addressing the problem, that's not addressing the root cause. Toronto Pearson has been over capacity for years. A night flight curfew is absolutely required. Government intervention is absolutely critical, is needed, and is past due. There are multiple representatives from Transport Canada in the audience here today. There are members of regional government, municipal government, and so forth. And again, part of our municipal government is not up at that table. items are not solved at the local level. CENAC is a failed process. Many of us have been here for years. It is not working, Transport Canada. It has not been working for years. The other thing here, we're talking about respite. We'll move the traffic to another airport instead of shifting around here and pitting neighborhood against neighborhood, community against community, which is not being a good neighbor. Please stop the items of pitting. Please stop the process of pitting communities against community. Transport Canada, you have the ability to provide respite to people here. It is critical and important for the economy, the well-being of people that work here. The airport alone is not the only part. Implementing the night flight curfew is essential from 11 p.m. forward. Let's rezone part of Toronto Pearson. Stop telling people what they can't build and cannot build in municipalities. Stop telling Mississauga how they should be zoning. They own the land. Pearson, you own the area within there. Transport Canada, do not privatize Toronto Pearson or any other airport in Canada. The NAV Canada review, called the Toronto Airspace Review, did not address everything. It addressed a heavily constrained, restrained document. There were many suggestions from the public and community that were put forward here. The Toronto Airspace Review failed and was constrained on capacity. It was constrained on so many other ways, and people at the CENAC meeting, as Nick was there announcing that he would be doing the study, we told Transport Canada, this review is not full enough. It is not encompassing enough of what the residents have wanted and asked for and expect for from their government. Mr. Trudeau talks about a transparent, truthful, progressive government. We're not seeing that in the oversight of Toronto Pearson and other airports. As far as insulation in schools and air conditionings, it's requirement of the provincial curriculum that kindergarten students spend a good portion of their day outside, as do other people. Stop imposing that people have to stay inside their residential area or their property to enjoy it. They should be able to go outside as they want and as they see fit. The last point that I would like to bring forward is that there's an independent and free press article called Increase in Air Traffic Draws Concerned Residents to the GTA Open House. It's dated April 30th, 2015. In there, Cynthia Woods and Michelle Bishop are quoted as basically saying that it's absolutely irregular, not quoted. They've indicated that the only time there's a need to fly over Georgetown is if the winds are from the east. There was construction on runway 5, and that's why there was some traffic going over Georgetown. Winds are predominantly from the west. Ms. Marshall has mentioned that. Ms. Bishop has mentioned that to me. Georgetown is a tiny dot, again, that haystack that I keep talking about. Stop. Transport Canada, people are being abused, they are being harassed, they are being assaulted, they are being tortured. This is not a nuisance, and it is not getting better. So according to the article that's in here, there is no requirement to fly over, through, or near Georgetown unless there's an irregular construction that's on a runway. So this was dated 2015, and yet I got 300 flights. It talks about the night flight average being 38, and I see screens and slides showing that's much more. So again, Transport Canada, what are you doing as far as implementing a policy and procedural change that is going to protect residents on the ground? NAV Canada, what are you doing to fulfill the request here in the item that is non-essential for flights to go through Georgetown, Ontario?
I would like to be clear that Georgetown is under an existing flight path. It was under an existing flight path before NAV Canada assumed responsibility for the ANS in 1996, and that flight path has not moved during the time in which we have operated the ANS. The 2015 article that you're referring to, I remember going to Georgetown for a meeting with the mayor because there had been a summer spike in noise complaints in the Georgetown area. There were more, Georgetown is overflown on arrival primarily on arrivals to runway 5, and there had been some construction that summer, I recall, that had resulted in us using runway 5 more days than we normally would have. But Georgetown has, I can go back and show you flight tracks from
the article says it's absolutely not required, and it's been indicated by NAV Canada it is not required to fly over and through Georgetown.
Absolutely.
Transport Canada, your response, please.
Yes, sir. We take noise management quite seriously. We understand that it is have an impact on many communities around the airports. We've undertaken for many years now several different strategies for noise management. One of them is reducing noise at source, so in other words, the aircraft engines themselves, and mandating that aircraft meet certain noise requirements. We also have different aircraft procedures that have been put in place, again, to mitigate noise. Land use planning around airports is something that we've provided guidance to municipalities on with respect to noise exposure forecasts and recommending certain types of development within certain types of noise exposure contours. We certainly expect that, or we don't encourage incompatible land use with respect to airports.
The airport itself is incompatible with the area.
We also have an approval process for changes in noise abatement procedures that need to come through Transport Canada and require approval, and part of that process is a consultative piece. And in terms of safety, we have, as I'm sure you're aware, regulations in place for the operation of an airport certificate holder, as well as other certificate holders like airlines and flight training units, etc. And we oversee that. We have a fairly robust surveillance program that monitors the compliance with our regulations, and we take enforcement action as is required. So we have a fairly robust system. I do totally understand that noise impacts communities in different ways.
Just to clarify, it's not just noise. It's not just
Chris,
noise.
just before you
and different
jump
people.
in,
So
Hillary wants to say something. Just to let Hillary have it.
The comment is to Transport Canada. I would like Transport Canada again to protect us.
And he has responded, so
Yeah,
let
no,
Hillary have a
it's
comment.
unsafe, sir. Absolutely unsafe. It's been
Listen.
absolutely unsafe. I'm
Listen,
not looking
folks,
for a response from Hillary Marshall. Next question, please.
I'll just be clear with everyone. Mr. Sismar's from Georgetown. We heard from this lady from Thornhill. We've heard from the folks from Long Branch, heard from the folks from Markland Woods. Each of you wants your community to be protected from noise impacts. And I'm telling you that the airport is a necessary transportation asset for the country and the region. Every airport in the country deals with noise issues just like we deal with. So we have to come forward with ways to balance the impact, which we've done. Can't protect for any single community, but we can work on noise management action plans. That is,
just a minute.
You're talking about a multi-billion-dollar undertaking and
please.
probably not realistic in the near term. So why don't we all focus on things that we can work on, like the noise management action plan?
It has been unanswered. So, take the temperature of the room. We're past our adjournment time. Would you like to continue on for about another 30 minutes? So there's lots of questions. I'll ask you to be brief. I'll ask both the questioner or the comments to be brief and the responses to be brief so we can get through some. So we're over here to a question, comment. Introduce yourself, please.
Good evening.
I'll ask you to be brief so we can get to as many of these hands that are up as possible.
Yes, I get the hint. My name is Richard Banky in English.
His microphone's not on.
No, I think it is.
It is, yeah.
I think
Just
it's
point the microphone at
you
your
just need to
mouth.
speak up, Mr. Banky.
It's my quiet disposition. Are we cool? Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Anyway, two quick questions, one of Hillary and one from our brother here from Transport Canada. Hillary, those 10 points that you brought up as part of the plan, is that now a fait accompli?
Yes, sir.
So
Those are
that's
things
it.
that we're working on.
So that's
based on feedback.
Based on feedback. Okay, so that is the program.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Question of you, sir. And be very careful how you answer this. Are you suggesting that prior to 1996, the year the GTAA took over responsibility of the airport in December, I think it was the 3rd or something, that any ministerial agreement, any ministerial promise, any commitment from the Ministry of Transport for Canada is now absolved past that date? In other words, whatever the minister would have promised to the community prior to that date of them taking it over, that suddenly it's just waived off, that whatever agreement was there? Is that what you're saying? And be very careful.
No, sir.
So what are you saying?
That's not what I'm saying, no.
You'll forgive me, but that's what I understood.
No, that's not what I've said. If it was in response to the
Please,
lady's question,
let him respond.
My response was about a specific document that she asked about, and I very clearly, I believe, stated that that document does not form part of our regulations or the ground lease to which we hold the airport responsible to comply with during the day-to-day operations. And we oversee those documents. We oversee the ground lease very robustly, and we surveil and oversee the compliance with the regulations. That's what I've said.
Because I understood the woman was very clear. And you suggested back to her that the obligations undertaken by the ministry prior to that date didn't hold. So you're not, so all those agreements still are valid then. It becomes important because this agreement here, we were just told that for these 10 points are now made more or less enshrined. How can we trust that type of stuff from officials when we see that we get these date things, suddenly a variation is made and no change at all? You happily use the north and south as though it were part of the original buildup.
Again, if you're speaking specifically on the commitments, I'll turn that over to the GTA to respond on.
But it's
if you're speaking on the document that I was asked about, I don't think I'll repeat myself unless you want me to, but again, that document is what I was responding on specifically.
I suggest, sir, that the answer you gave is somewhat confusing, so that's why I had asked you to be very careful in how you answered it.
So he's been clear
But-
now.
Thank you.
Well, sorry.
His response is clear to what you asked, so let's move on to the next question. Right here. Please introduce
Mark
yourself.
Brooks, Richmond Hill, Ontario.
Hi.
And first, I'm actually a fan of the GTA up to this point. You've done a great job with the limited resources you have, okay? However, you made 3 references, or possibly 4, to a new runway which you claim you don't need for capacity reasons. I find that surprising because a decade ago that new runway was considered of no value, would not add any significant capacity to the airport because you could not do simultaneous landings on it. And in your own report, interesting reading the master plan, you say that you can do 60 landings and takeoffs on the north-south pair, sorry, on the east-west runways, and 48 on the north. So by your own numbers, you can do maybe 12 additional movements an hour if you built that new runway. I'm wondering, is that correct, or is that a misstatement? Also, your numbers are kind of extraordinary. They're actually exceeding those of Heathrow on an hourly basis in IMC. Given that Heathrow is 100% full and has been for a decade, and that we don't have an offset airport like Heathrow does, how are you planning to achieve those numbers?
So I think we should be clear about the numbers. So if you look at the average number of passengers per airplane today, it's what, 104?
I'm talking about capacity of the runways, not
but
people
we have
capacity.
we have 5 runways. Heathrow has 2.
And you can use 2 of those runways at a time.
Let her respond, please.
Let me just finish.
Let her finish her
The
response.
average growth in movements over the next to 2037 is about what, 1.5%. So I think what a lot of people get confused about is the number of passengers is doubling, but the number of aircraft movements aren't. And one more point, the planes are getting larger. So there are more people on the planes, which is why we can accommodate that many more passengers.
I'm not talking about passengers.
Okay.
I'm talking about purely about airport capacity landings and takeoffs. You can do 2 simultaneous landings at Pearson due to the poor layout of your runways at once, not 3, 2, okay? The north-south pair of runways had a stated capacity of 75 movements, which is similar to, by the way, to what Heathrow was stating. Now move that number to 90. The east-west, you've now moved it to 110 or 108, I can't recall exactly, of which you're stating 48 movements for 2 of those runways, or sorry, for the north part of the east-west runway. And these numbers just don't make sense. They don't add up. And so I'm very surprised. My first question is, have you had these numbers peer-reviewed? And how do they compare to Heathrow? Remember, Heathrow is 100% full. Heathrow has been 100% full for a decade, okay? 60% of all the flights that go into Heathrow today go into a holding pattern first, or are delayed in flight. 200 tons of fuel a day is wasted in Heathrow. That's why they're building another runway at Heathrow. And yet you're presenting numbers that exceed those. I mean, you got some magic pixel dust. I think the aviation industry would like to hear it.
So the question's about the numbers, and as I think it was alluded to, the report has gone to Transport Canada for their reviews. They have
I can answer. Yeah. Mr. Brooks, thank you for your question. I think to address the comparison to Heathrow, we can actually use 3 runways at a time, not just 2, but 2 can be used for arrivals at a time. I think that our estimated capacity is 110 movements per hour in poor weather for an overall capacity of 650,000 movements on the runway complex that we currently have. So we are able to use our runways differently than Heathrow, and we are confident that the numbers are accurate. So.
Has it been peer-reviewed? Have those numbers been peer-reviewed?
They've been subject to an engineering performance standard, so that's where they come from.
Okay. Have they been reviewed by line pilots?
We've seen those numbers been performed, so I think they're practical numbers.
I mean, those are extraordinary numbers, truly extraordinary.
They are. But they're reasonable numbers as well.
And is there a response to his first question about the extra runway? I think it was in the presentation.
Oh, from a capacity perspective, we do protect for that fourth east-west runway. I think that any benefit that would provide at present time would be purely from a resiliency perspective. So if we needed to do construction on one runway or another, it certainly provides that resiliency. But from an operational capacity planning, it's not required, is what the master plan indicates.
I mean, you seem to allude to that it would add about 12 more movements an hour in your report, because you used the term 60 for the 2 paired runways and 48 for the north.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and that compares, by the way, to 37 movements at Heathrow per runway. You're using 48 on a similar runway.
Maybe we can take this conversation offline, and George and Mike and myself can continue to answer your questions.
George has all the numbers and he can talk to you in detail about that. So let's go over to the question over here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wayne from South Etobicoke, Aldwood area. I've been coming to these meetings as long as I can remember. And I think each time I come, I get a few more gray hairs and a few more wrinkles, because I keep hearing so much talk, so much reports, so much reviews, a lot of hot air, but very little action. And I don't think the panel is responsible or compatible for the work that you're doing. And a lot of us in the room have asked for the CEO or the big boss or the chief to come to these meetings, and he still hasn't shown up. So Hillary, can you give us an answer? Because we've asked this so many times. Where is the big chief? Where is the big boss, CEO? He doesn't get involved. So what we would like, more action, less talk, less studies. I think in another 5 years, I'll still be here, and very few things in this report will be taken care of. So get action, get speedy, get to be the Energizer Bunny, and keep moving instead of slowing down like a turtle. Thank you very much.
Okay, question here. We have about 10 minutes left, so let's keep these
My name is Ina Daya from Brampton. I have 2 things to suggest here. Actually, we had those meetings and I attended them, and we did suggest that we bring the cargo flights to Hamilton. We suggested that, and nothing is talked about it. We also talked about You say you care, you love us, and you will do everything to please us. We are here on the field right now. We are concerned. We left our home in a cold night to come and discuss this with you. If London can afford to have a curfew from 11 to 6 in the morning, if London, UK, and you know you're always worried about the money, that you're going to lose all the lending fees, why cannot Toronto do that? We're here. We're here and you're here. And let's decide right now. We all are agreeing that we don't want night flights. Why can you not just put a stop right now? Why do you have to go to the drawing board and talk about it? Secondly, we talked about Hamilton taking all the cargo flights there, right? You want the money. That's all you care about. You don't care about our sleep. You don't care about anything. Trust me.
We're I guess I'll just start by saying we are a not-for-profit organization, so all the money generated from the revenues goes back into infrastructure. We don't get any money from government. Put it all back into development of the facilities, investing in the runways. So just want to point that out.
One comment, please.
Secondly, in terms of cargo, Hamilton's cargo facility has been growing, and I suspect it will continue to grow. Ours has been going down, or in terms of the previous master plan forecast, it's actually down, the number of anticipated cargo movements, so there's that. And we continue to work with all the airports within the Southern Ontario region. There's 11 airports that we work with to identify what their business goals might be and how they might take on more traffic. We can't push traffic to any airport, but we can certainly partner with them to continue to work on this voluntary basis.
How can we have a curfew?
I'm happy to answer that one too.
We'd like to hear from you. Why do not you pursue the curfew push?
So
curfew. Just put it in.
Let her respond, please.
We do have a restricted operation during the night, which limits the number of flights. Now, there's about 48 flights an hour, or sorry, a night. So we do have that program. Other airports also have similar programs. But let's face it, there are flights that come from Asia. There's flights that go to Canada's west coast. They operate in different hours. They generate jobs, significant jobs, and revenue. So
please,
before we make any commitments on night flights, and we did say that we would study them, we need to understand what the impact will be so that we can consider all the sides in the argument. Okay, and now...
excuse me, and then the question about the CEO.
It is about jobs. Airports are important economic assets. You travel to different places to conduct work. You travel for maybe dollars to donuts. Each of you is probably traveling once a year to go somewhere. And an airport provides a necessary service for business people, for tourists, for immigration. It is not reasonable to expect that an airport is not going to exist in this region.
She's answered the question about the night flights.
I'm saying if you can afford to have a curfew at night, why cannot we have?
Sir, just to be clear, Heathrow does have a curfew, but that's similar to ours. It just restricts the number of flights. It doesn't mean there aren't any flights at night. They have 6,000 flights a year. We still have a curfew.
We do have a curfew.
The airport has always been 24/7.
Okay, let's have one conversation. Just the response to the question about the CEO.
Sorry, Howard's in Washington, D.C. over the next 2 days. As I've said before, I'm here to represent the management team. I take this very seriously. When you have come to these meetings and expressed a desire to see us study noise sharing, we undertook it. When you told us you didn't want noise sharing, that it isn't predictable and meaningful, and therefore we can't proceed with studying the north-south runway, we did it. When you told us you wanted us to look at quieter airplanes and address the A320, we undertook that. When you told us you wanted respite in the form of insulation and other factors, we've undertaken that right here together. So I'm encouraging you to keep coming to these meetings, to keep giving us your feedback, to keep working with us. I am responsible to Howard and to the board for reporting on what goes on at these meetings, what our noise management strategies are, and I commit to keep doing that.
It's about 25 after. We have time for 2 more questions, one here and one here at the back. Let's go over here. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Mary James, and I've lived down in Alderwood really all my life. My parents bought the house in 1950. The airport has got progressively worse. I'm surprised I don't have a lung disease with the amount of, you can smell the exhaust from the planes. I am getting very tired to coming to all these meetings. I don't want the statistics and everything. I'm getting to a point, every time I come to a meeting, I get a headache. All I hear is the same thing. We've got to do certain things. Transport Canada, the government, they don't care. It tinkers about us, the people that are being crucified by the airport. I'm very angry. I don't show it, but I'm very angry. All I hear is the same old thing. I come to all the meetings, and I get the same old thing. We've got to do surveys. We've got to do this. And where are these monitors going to be put? Are they going to be put down in Alderwood again? I live down Alderwood by really above the Long Branch GO station, so I've got 2 things that are a pain in the neck. But the airport, when I see them coming in, the noise is terrible, the flights that are so low and the noise, and I don't know how you can fly when there's so many condos that are being built. I am scared of one of the planes going in. I just don't understand it. Now, with these new planes that are being built, they're larger. Now, do they need to have a wider runway, or does it have to be built longer because of them coming in? What's the situation with that? But I'm getting royally fed up, Robin. Again, I say, where's the president? He's in New York. Big deal. I don't care where the heck he is. He should be out listening to us, the residents, the people, and the people that Transport Canada. Oh, stop yelling at me. Transport Canada. Don't be a. And Transport Canada, you don't seem to understand or know what's going on, which really makes me kind of shaky. But I was going to ask a question. Does the ground lease previous by the minister, what else did I have to say? Does the ground lease override the ministry decisions?
So does the ground lease override the minister's decisions? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yep.
About the environment.
About the environment.
Sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
She's asking if the ground lease would override environmental concerns.
We'll need to look at the specifics.
Well, see,
what are the specifics
you're going to look at it.
What
I don't understand, looking at things all the time, come out to the people. Our politicians should have meeting within our areas, which they don't have anymore, like they used to. Many years ago, I'm a young baby boomer, and I've been around a little bit, so I know. But I'm fed up, all this stuff. I've come to all the meetings, and I go home with a headache. And by the end, everybody's at each other. We should be all a happy group, this group here, and being treated with respect, and don't talk down to us. And at the next meeting, I'll be at the next meeting. But, all you do is laugh and other things. And I always remember the first meeting I went to.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
I'm really quite tired and disgusted. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we have time for one question. Where are you? Right here. Okay, just introduce yourself, please. Last question.
Hi, my name is Les. I live in Alderwood. Just a couple of quick questions. One is the master plan. The one previous to the new one indicated capacity predictions, which would have triggered talk about a new airport. Now, I know the airlines are more efficient, they're bigger, the seats are smaller, people are jammed in tighter. So that itself should be a safety concern for people to evacuate a plane when they're crowded in like sardines. Does the new master plan have a capacity prediction in it? And what year would that be? What is the number of movements that would trigger that? And the second question is your night flight budget. What is your current night flight budget for this year? What is it supposed to be for next year?
So the question was, what's the maximum capacity out of the master plan?
I can answer the night flight budget question.
Okay, night flight budget.
So the budget for the previous year, which runs, which just ended in November, was just over 18,000 movements, and the current formula would have it grow at the rate of passenger movements. We haven't done the calculations yet, but it would be higher than 18,200. Yep, correct.
Yes.
If I don't have the math in my head.
Capacity of the master plan. George, do you have?
650,000
is the max.
the capacity for the master plan.
Yep.
That's 2037.
In 2037.
2037. Okay, I just noticed that the councillor has a comment to make, so we'll turn that over to the councillor for her to close out the comments and questions. So please go ahead, councillor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Fonseca. I'm a city councillor in the city of Mississauga, and I sit on CENAC. I had 3 questions. Some are partially been answered, but the first question is with regards to the letter to Health Canada and the response. And Robin, you had said that you will be going to meet, the GTA will be going to meet with representatives of Health Canada in Ottawa. Will these questions be posted and published and presented to CENAC? And will CENAC members or members of the public have the opportunity to provide questions that can be asked to to Health Canada? And will this also be followed up with a letter to the MPs, because there has been a commitment from the MPs in the form of a committee, a GTA MP committee, and I think they should be made aware of these meetings as well. Could you please answer that?
Sure. Actually, that's a brilliant idea to make sure to solicit questions before that meeting happens, and absolutely we will report back.
Quite a few concerns from the public here tonight around health, and I think it's very important that their questions are raised and that it be, even though the meeting will be...
That's a great idea. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
thanks. Second one is the use of runway 15R 33L. It's been brought up a number of times. In 1991, Transport Canada, and they put this forward, the 1991 Environmental Impact Statement Summary states the new runway, at the time new runway, operating in the north-south direction would primarily be used during the 5% of the year when wind conditions prevent operations, airport operations, on the higher capacity east-west parallels, or when operational contingencies force its use. The proposed runway will be dedicated primarily to arrivals in both directions, and the existing north-south runway used primarily in very rare and exceptional circumstances for departures. So my question to, and this was already brought up by a couple of people in terms of self-policing, my question to, I guess this would be the GTAA and Navigation Canada first, is do you feel that you are sticking to this commitment and self-policing properly?
Well, if you look back over the last 20 years in terms of our north-south runway usage, we've operated in the spirit of that document, that memo, that Transport Canada memo, at 5% of the time for arrivals from the south and 1% from the north. So as everyone here I think has learned tonight, we have the 2 runways that go north-south and 3 that go east-west. And for capacity reasons, we're predominantly always going to have to be on the east-west. So in terms of how we continue to operate, we continue to operate primarily on the east-west. Councillor Fonseca.
However, I do believe that, and we get many complaints, and many of the complaints listed here, and as we've heard from residents, that the runways are being used beyond this initial commitment. So then my question to Transport Canada would be, will you consider taking over the responsibility of ensuring that the GTA fulfilled this commitment that was made in 1991. So that's to Transport Canada.
So let me just be clear here. So we operate our runways as we need to address capacity, and we have operated the north-south runways in the spirit of that memo, and in the interest of balancing the growth in our operations with the impact on communities to the south. Totally have done that. That was at that point in time.
That was not the commitment that was made.
Since that time, we have come to hear from other communities about the need to address some of the operational impacts on those communities as well. So we'll continue to consider how we use those runways going forward.
Okay, my final question is with regards to night flights. So we've heard, and partially this was answered, so in 1997 when the Transport Canada transferred the airport, there were 10,000 movements a year in the night flights, and it was already addressed that there are now about 19,000. This is to Transport Canada. In 2013, Transport Canada approved the Airport Authority's request to bump up the limit over and above passenger growth by 10% on 3 future occasions. And just for some comparisons, and this has kind of been referenced too, there's a total ban on night flights in Frankfurt. Heathrow has a limit of only 5,800 movements. And keeping in mind, we have, I don't know what the actual movements are in the shoulder hours around the night flight hours. But so my question to Transport Canada is, will Transport Canada, within this new noise management action plan, rescind the provision for the 3 future 10% bump ups? Will Transport Canada mandate a sizable reduction in the night flight budget and eliminate the annual increase? Will Transport Canada mandate a noise quota system that will then define the total annual noise night flight budget that the communities receive? So that's to Transport Canada within this overall noise management action plan.
Yeah, we sit on the CENAC as a technical advisor. We are a non-voting member on the committee. Question or suggestions like that, I would suggest if you'd like to make them, you can send them directly to us at Transport Canada and let us know that that is something that you're proposing. In terms of my ability to tell you whether we can do that or intend to do that, that's not my role on this committee tonight.
Okay, thank you. My question, and it sort of ties into the night flights, this is to Hillary. Hillary, earlier in the presentation, you referenced that there's been, on average, an increase at the airport of 1% to 2%. However, I do read in other reports that in this past year, it has been a 6.2% increase in terms of passenger movements, which then ties into what the current night flight formula is. Can you explain that variation, or can you, so you referenced 1% to 2%, so can you give clarity around that?
Sure, so I was referring to the average annual movement growth over the next 20 years, so over that time horizon within the master plan submission, which is completely in line with regional growth.
Okay, but in the last year, there's been a reference to 6.2% increase in passenger growth.
I think you're talking about passengers. You're talking about passenger growth versus aircraft
two different
movement.
numbers, passenger growth versus movement of aircraft.
1 to 2, sorry, yeah, let me be clear. The 1 to 2% is movement growth. So aircraft movement, not passenger growth.
Yeah. Okay, and I'll just finish off with a comment for myself. To me, the movement forward of Toronto Pearson and the objective for the GTA and surrounding communities is not to find a way of creating the biggest airport possible, which seems to be the direction that is happening right now.
Not at all.
Rather, it is to define the size and type of airport that balances the transportation needs of our region, everyone here in the room, with the quality of life needs of all communities throughout the region, and to live within those bounds. Thank you.
So I'm just going to refer back to that statement, Councillor Fonseca. When we say we want to be the best airport in the world, that doesn't mean being the biggest airport in the world. So there are other airports that are far larger. We're never going to be the biggest airport in the world. What you heard here tonight is we are growing. We're growing in line with the region. We have an important role that we play in Canada. 1 in 5 Canadians flies through, to, or from this airport. That is the way airports operate. They have international gateway airports supported by spokes, just the way they work around the world. We're going to continue to play that role because the country, the province, and the region needs us to play that role. It's important for the GTA, and it's important for Mississauga, most importantly. So we're going to continue to balance this role with managing noise. And so you've seen here tonight what our noise management action plan is. A lot of you have given feedback directly to us, and we have incorporated that into our plan. We're going to keep working on it. We invite you to keep coming out to these meetings and keeping us honest about the work we're doing and giving us feedback.
Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you. So with those closing comments, the meeting's adjourned.